Welcome to the Modern Sales Leader Podcast. In today's episode, we talked to Jack Miller, SDR leader over at Aptega. He's been an SDR leader for years, but he got his start at a really young age. So he's had to learn a lot, trial by fire. And in this episode, he shares his experiences with us, some best practices, and ultimately he's here to help us become better sales leaders for our sales teams. Let's roll. Jack, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. Welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So let's start just kind of on a personal level. Again, I don't know you at all, and I'm really excited to get to know you. Can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, like both personally and professionally?
Yeah, for sure. So I am based in Washington, D.C. I grew up in the Maryland area and then lived all over the country while I was growing up because I was training to be a professional ballet dancer, which I'll get into that story later. But yeah, eventually moved back here. So I live in DC, love the DC area. I am a sales leader at Aptega, which is a cybersecurity software platform. And outside of that, I'm in grad school right now at Georgetown and staying super busy with lots of projects here in DC.
Amazing. What are you getting your graduate degree in?
I'm getting my MBA.
Very cool. How is that going, balancing MBA, grad school with full-time sales leader role?
It's a lot. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. But yeah, it's going really well. It's been great to be in the room with lots of other professionals and be able to bring what I learn every day to my team and to my company. So been a really
Yeah.
awesome experience. Learned a lot really quickly, but definitely some very long days, leading the team all day, rushing to class at night. So, but I've gotten used to it and it's really been an awesome experience.
Awesome. Awesome. And what drove the desire to get a grad degree? Because I think you and I both know there's a lot of people in tech sales that don't even have college education. So what's kind of the goal for you with that?
Yeah, I found myself in management super early in my career. And I think a lot of young managers would probably relate to this in that there was a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of trying to figure out what was going on. And so there was an opportunity to apply to the MBA program at Georgetown. It looked like they were looking for those who worked in the tech industry. And so I happened to meet a lot of the requirements they were particularly looking for at that time. And so I put an application out on the whim. It is not the normal way that people apply to MBA programs, but it ended up working out really well. And initially it was just to gain more experience and have more confidence in my role and as a manager. And I'm so glad I did it, like I said, because I've been able to learn a lot in the last few years.
That's really cool. So I'm also a DMV native, grew up in Ashburn, and I had my first like big city job in DC off K Street. And yeah, so cool to meet another DMV native. What do you do for fun? Like outside of work, how do you spend time when you're not in grad school and leading a team? Maybe you don't. I don't know.
Well, in that very little window of time each week, I do love to work out. Fitness has always been a super important part of my life. Like grew up in a fitness focused family and my parents were athletes. And so I've always been surrounded by that. So I love to work out. I just ran a marathon a couple weeks ago. So that kept me super busy with long runs on the weekends and runs during the week. But, I think that not only for my physical fitness, it's just been so good for my mental health to be able to run weekly. So I love to work out. I'm also in a tennis league, love to play tennis when I have the time. Not a whole lot of time to do that these days, but later in life, hoping to have more
Are
time to do.
you bought in on the pickleball stuff, or are you just superior because you're a tennis player?
So I feel like there's this rivalry between tennis and pickleball, and I don't buy into that. I love both. I think both are really fun. So yeah, I'm not one of those that is against pickleball, but do genuinely enjoy both.
Awesome. Well, you said you'll talk about the ballet stuff later, which I do have questions about, but being a ballerina, absolute athletic ability required for that. So I'm not surprised you're keeping with it still. What's the worst sales advice you've been given? And did you actually follow it?
The worst sales advice I've ever been given. I think
This is
the
a tough
worst.
question too.
No, I think about this in the context of not only sales, but also just in my career, be patient. I don't really buy into that either too much. I think that there's an importance to being strategic and knowing when to strategically be patient in a sales motion. But I think that
Yeah.
there's always something that we can be doing. There's always something that we can be doing to push forward, even just 1% more. So I think that, yeah, that's probably the worst advice I've been given is just to be patient.
Yeah. I love that because it's a spicy answer because a lot of people put patience on, a value pedestal, which obviously patience is essential in life, right? But myself being someone who promoted very quickly into leadership from a young age, I am a proponent of you have to advocate for yourself and you have to be willing to go to war for what you want. And you have to do it in a humble way, of course. But yeah, if everyone around me told me to be patient, then I probably wouldn't be where I am today. And obviously, I'm supposed to be where I am today. So I am actually in full agreement with that.
Yeah, I think it is a hot take and it can be taken the wrong way. But what I mean by don't be patient is just don't be afraid to keep pushing, to
Yeah.
find another way to move forward because usually there is a way, even if it's not super obvious.
Yeah, full agree. I love that. Okay, let's go to ballet. So take us through the journey of how you go from professional ballet to SDR manager. What did that journey actually look like?
Yeah, so super traditional career path, right? I trained my entire life to be a dancer. Like I said, parents were athletes, so it was always, you know, do something, like find something you love. And they were amazing and supportive in that I really could have gone any direction and I tried a lot of different things, but dance happened to stick. And I just got more serious over the years. I had some really good mentors. I had some really good teachers, ended up in some like ballet boarding schools and pre-professional programs. And so everything was super accelerated and landed my first company contract when I was 17 years old. So ended up
Wow.
joining a ballet company as I was graduating high school. And I decided that I still wanted to pursue a degree. So I was doing that online at the same time.
Mm.
And at this point, I was like, this is awesome. Like, landed the dream job. This is what I've always wanted. And so it was really a cool experience to get into that world. It was challenging. I learned a ton, many of which I think has carried over into my sales career, believe it or not. But yeah, it was awesome. And then the pandemic happened to all of us. And I think I'm not the only one whose life changed a lot. And so pandemic happens. Like I said, I had been accustomed to working full time and pursuing my degree. And so there was something in me that was like, I just want to see what else I can do. And I was sent this company that I formerly worked for that was doing video streaming. And so at the time I was like, this is my way I saw it as my way to kind of give back to the arts and like help them keep moving forward to stream their performances and stuff. So that was like the initially why I got into it. And at the time, Uscreen was a very small company. They had like two people on their sales team. And so I had no idea what I was doing and jumped in and happened to be surrounded by some really intelligent people who were really patient with me and in an industry that was growing really fast during a time when the rest of the world was really slow. So it was because it was video streaming during the pandemic. And
Yeah.
so jumped into that and I think super lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And things just took off so quickly because everyone was looking to stream their content. And so had this amazing experience where we grew from a 2-person sales team to a 30-person sales team in a matter of
Wow.
months. I was managing a team in just a few months. And then, they brought in senior leadership above me that really kind of showed me the ropes, guided me through building out a sales development motion. And it was such an incredible experience that just took off so fast. And so at that point, fast forward 2 years, I'm leading an SDR team. And yeah, there was no going back from there. So that's kind of how I ended up
Wow.
in sales dev in the tech industry. And I've been lucky to find the next dream job. I think it's been pretty awesome.
That's insane. But I'm also not surprised because a lot of leaders I talk to have very non-traditional stories. Like we all kind of end up in sales and that's kind of a trope, but it's a trope because it tends to be true. I don't think any of us were like, "Oh, I want to be an SDR manager one day." I think it's just like, "Wow, life happened. Let's make things work." And oh, this opportunity came up and then boom, 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 one thing after another. I am curious to hear so ballet to tech sales, like that's a transition in itself. What about going from SDR to SDR manager? Did you feel way ahead of your skis, or did you actually feel pretty confident in that?
Yeah, I think I definitely felt way ahead of my skis. I think that's part of the reason what drove me into a master's program was to feel like I could get the skis underneath of me. But I think that, yeah, there was a lot of learning along the way. It was definitely challenging. I think anyone who makes that jump from being an SDR to, I was promoted to a position where I was managing peers. So I was managing some of the people that were my peers during that initial phase of my sales career. So that was
That's
definitely,
hard. That's really hard.
yeah, it was tough, but I wouldn't change it. I mean, I learned a lot from it. And yeah, I think that the biggest thing was just that I realize now is that like it's okay to not know everything when you're promoted into that sort of role. Just own what you don't know and ask for help. And I think people will respect you so much more for that. And you can lean into your strengths. There's a reason why you were moved into that role. And I think that I've had to remind myself that. And it's made me, yeah, as I've transitioned into now this new SDR team that I'm managing, I keep that in mind that it's okay to not know everything. There are people who are really smart and I lean on them. And then I bring the things to the table that I know as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Even that, if you think about a CEO, for example, really what they are is they're a chief delegator. And so there's this weird oxymoron in leadership. Actually, the higher up you go, the more you depend on other people. But that does take a measure of humility to say, hey, I don't know it all. And so, Jack, I feel like as you're talking, I can relate to you because I too was promoted from SDR to SDR manager within my team with peers that I'm now being told I've got to manage and lead. And at first, I thought I had to have all the answers. I was actually very insecure. And a lot of the things we did worked, praise God, because I was just kind of shooting for my hip. But at the same time, as I've been in leadership longer, I realize more and more I don't know it all. And so a lot of SDRs do get promoted because they're the top performers. And I imagine that's what happened with us. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best leaders, right? Do you relate to that at all? Is it because you were the top performer that brought you
management,
over?
management, I feel like is a different skill than sales. Like managing a team is a whole other ball game and
Yeah.
people management is hard. And so I think that, yeah, and just because someone is a top performer on a sales team doesn't mean that they're going to be a great sales leader. So I definitely think it's hard. And I think that that's been one of the things that I've had to keep in mind through every step of this is that I'm learning a new skill along the way too and perfecting that every day. And it's not like I'm showing up and following my system for hitting quota. It's an ever evolving learning.
So if you were able to sit down with young, wide-eyed, scared, newly promoted SDR manager Jack Miller, if you were able to go back to him, what advice would you give him as he transitions from SDR to SDR manager?
I would say take a deep breath. I would say it's okay to not know all the answers. Ask for help when you need it. Own what you don't know and be confident in what you do know.
Yeah. I think that resonates again with me because I probably would have told myself the same thing where it's like, hey, just because you're a leader now doesn't mean you have to know it all. You're going to know it all. And once I started interacting with even more senior leadership, right? Like you talked about how they brought in more leaders that were more senior to you. That's when I got really insecure because I started to wonder like, well, why do they need me? Right? Why
Mhm.
am I here? They know everything. I don't. And I'm supposed to know how to run this little team over here. Why am I here? I
Yeah.
suck at this. So, did you have that same kind of interaction, or did you actually feel comforted to have some leaders over you that were able to pour into you?
No, I definitely felt that when they brought on the senior leaders. I definitely had that moment a few times where it was like, oh, they're changing what I've done and they're doing it better and they're not going to need me anymore. But I think I was lucky to have some leaders that were reassuring that, I was a piece of the puzzle and that while they were changing things, that we were going to be a strong, important part of that change. And so that definitely gave me a little bit of comfort as they were changing a lot of things along the way. And then I was able to really lean into that change more.
Yeah. Good. Good. Well, I mean, anyone listening to this that is going through an internal promotion from SDR to SDR leader, Jack and Jack, come hit us up because we were there and it's scary and it's really hard, but you'll be okay. You'll be fine.
Yep.
Yeah. So you kind of move forward in your career, like Uscreen. That's a big deal because that was a really high growth startup, right? And so can you tell us, high growth is a sexy SaaS word we all use. What does high growth actually mean?
High growth is, I think of it like a mountain, right? At the top of the mountain, you have a larger company that is going to move a little bit slower, but they have all the things in place. They know what works. They know what doesn't for the most part. I mean, of course there's change at every sized organization, but I think like at that point, they've found more stability. And then you have the bottom of the hill, which is like a brand new startup where every day is a fire drill and you're trying to figure out what is happening. And then that high growth stage is the mountain in between. And I think that that's where Uscreen fell and where when I joined, which was amazing because it was like they've already learned a lot and they already had some of the systems in place. And we were starting to really build upon the very hard work that the initial founding team did. But we weren't quite at that phase where everything was figured out or most things were figured out. And that's not to say that everything gets figured out when a company is large. I'm not saying that. But I think that's what a high growth company is. And at least my experience has been is that really fun in between where it's like, okay, we figured out what we want to do and the direction that we're going. And we have a strong idea about how we're going to go about this. And now it's time to run. And now it's time to do it. And that's personally where I'd love to be. And yeah, had that experience with Uscreen, and that's where I am at Aptega now. And it's been really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I had that experience at Clearbit actually. And this is before they got acquired by HubSpot, but it was so fun. You're right. That's the word because you have this success foundation. And I think success is the oxygen of sales, right? Like if you're not winning, it's very easy to lose all of your momentum and hope and faith. But if you have a foundation of success and you know there's so much more, if you could just fix this, get this going, scale this out, that is such a fun time. But there's also a lot of challenges with that specific high growth time. What are some challenges, if we were to list some out, that come to mind for you? Like when you were sitting in that high growth mode as a leader, what challenges did you run into?
I mean, in the high growth stage, you're still testing a lot. So while it's not, while there's a bit more direction and focus, there are a lot of experiments happening and a lot of projects running. And I think that's where some of the challenge can come into play. You got to make sure everyone's on the same page. We got to make sure we're all running in the same direction. And so I think that, and the speed of a high growth company is so fast that it's really important that everyone's on the same page from the top down. And so like all the way down to every SDR that's there. And I think that, that's where I think challenge can come in is if there's any sort of ambiguity on the goal, or like where we're actually going. And so I think that, and within each project. And so, yeah, that's where I think the challenge comes in. And I think the way we combat that is just communication, like across all levels.
Yeah, the word testing resonates with me because we were testing so many different things. And for me as a leader, it's actually really hard to keep track of everything. And when you're smaller and you're still figuring it out, everyone's testing a lot, but there's not as much noise because there's less reps, the team's smaller. Then when you're really big, all the processes are established. So I think that word testing hits pretty deep. Do you have an example of something that you're actually able to implement that your SDR team did in that high growth mode that really brought results? Like, did you guys do a new type of outbound? Did you implement ABC tests? Did you do a new phone strategy? Is there anything tangible that you can share with us?
Yeah. One of the big motions that I've done is like during that high growth stages, taking the team from a really high volume sort of approach to a very targeted multi-channel account based approach. And I think that that sort of transition, while it feels very uncomfortable for an SDR team, it is so much more efficient in the long run and creates such better results. And so, yeah, that's something that we did both at Uscreen and at Aptiga over the last year, has been moving from this kind of large scale motion to a really focused, targeted, account based sort of strategy. And
Yeah.
I've found that to work very well in this stage.
Good. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Uscreen is bootstrapped, right?
Uscreen is bootstrapped, correct?
Aptiga VC, correct?
PE backed.
PE. Okay, interesting. So not VC, PE. Did you notice a difference at all in like the growth strategy and maybe I don't know, like the playbooks y'all ran because one was bootstrapped and one was PE?
I haven't noticed a huge difference because both organizations, I feel like you would maybe expect things to move a bit slower at a PE backed company because there's a lot of approvals and things involved, which is definitely the case. But I still feel like we really keep the tempo as if we were a bootstrapped company. So, and I think that our our investment firm is awesome and understands that sort of speed. And so I haven't noticed like too big of a difference. One of the big differences has just been the network of support amongst other SDR leaders. Like being at a bootstrapped company, I was the sole SDR leader and I
Yeah.
kind of felt like I was on an island sometimes. But like being at under a PE firm, there's a lot of other SDR leaders that I get to interact with and learn from. And so that's been a really cool experience. So I don't think like there hasn't been really any negatives relating to the specific like investment
Sure.
strategy, but I think that yeah, both have moved very quickly and both have had positive experiences in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. The last company I was at, Fourth Enterprises, they're backed by Marlin Equity Partners or something like that. So I just came from PE as well. And that's something we just started to spin up where we all had this epiphany of like, wait, we have like, I don't know, 30 or 50 different SDR leaders across the portfolios. Why not just meet up and start sharing best practices? So literally in the last month I was there, we had like our second SDR leader meeting. So for the listeners out there, if you do have access to that kind of network, take advantage of it. Even if you're VC, like see if you can work that up the chain to create some kind of cohort or support system. Because I think you'd agree, Jack, the most I've gotten out of my strategies and tips and tactics and approaches to sales leadership and SDR has been from other leaders, simply just like learning what they're doing. So do you resonate with that, or do you feel like you've been able to actually maybe contribute more than you've received?
Absolutely. No, I've been able to learn so much from other leaders in the space. And I think even when I was working for the bootstrap company, I really made an effort to get involved in SDR leader groups. And it was really helpful to hear people at different sized companies working in different industries, hearing about their different strategies. Like definitely encourage anyone who feels like they're on an island as like the sole SDR leader at their company, like get involved in those groups because I found that really helpful. And then, yeah, like working under the portfolio, I've been definitely taking advantage of the connections with the other SDR leaders here
Yeah.
because there have been a lot that have achieved a lot of success and been able to learn so much. So yeah, the network is
Yeah.
super.
So something more tactical then for the leader out there who's listening to this, like, oh, it'd be great if I could plug in with other leaders. I know of a few groups, but a lot of them are what we would call like dark social. Like they're not public groups and no one really knows about them. You just randomly get added one day. I know like Pavilion's got a great leadership group. Dale Thorne is doing amazing work connecting leaders one on one. By the way, I have no specific plugs or affiliations. These are just helpful names to throw out there. Where else can people go to try to plug in with other leaders?
Sam Nelson runs a great one called SDR Leaders.
His is
What-
great too. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a few out there. If you search on LinkedIn, there are quite a few out there. I know of Pavilions as well, which I've heard is phenomenal.
Cool. Cool. So scaling an SDR team in a rapid growth environment is something you're no stranger to. I am curious on the hiring side. Is there anything specific you're looking for in an SDR candidate, considering they're going to be in a high growth environment? Is there anything like unique or anything you're indexing for that maybe a traditional SDR doesn't need, or is it all pretty much the same?
I think most leaders are looking for someone who's super driven, and I think that's a given and something that I certainly look for. But in this particular environment, I need to make sure that people are comfortable with change because this is the type of place that where things are changing monthly, sometimes weekly, and
Yeah.
I think that there are some people who are really great at leaning into that change and adapting and keeping a positive attitude and keeping things moving forward. And then there are some people who that sort of environment is really uncomfortable for them. And I don't think that's
Mhm.
wrong. I don't think that there's like, I don't think that says anything particular about a person. I think it's just like, where do you thrive? And high growth companies are for some types of personalities, those who are very comfortable with change, and those who are a not so comfortable environment, probably not the best place for them. But there are other great organizations out there that aren't moving at quite that pace that would be a much more comfortable environment and they can still
Yeah.
contribute a ton.
Yeah. And I think there's pros and cons to each because I've been in both environments myself, even as a leader. And I think some of the pros of high growth are you're going to learn more than you've ever learned in your life before. The opportunity potential is massive because there is so much growth. There's new roles opening up all the time. There's new expertise needed, all of that. And it's fun. Like no 2 days are the same, truly. Those are all pros, but there's cons.
I
Like,
love one,
hey,
but
yeah, go ahead.
some people don't though. Some people don't love that no 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
Some people want a little bit more predictability. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that, yeah, it's not the nature of a high growth company for sure.
Yeah, you have to know what you're signing up for. And then, conversely, if you're at a very established company, it's kind of nice because everything is just plug in, plug out. A, B, C, D. Let's go. And if you show up, you do your work, you're probably going to be successful and that's it. And so it really just kind of what you're saying comes back down to personality and just being self aware. But it doesn't sound like you're indexing for anything too specific other than can you handle change? Is that right?
Yeah. Can you handle change? Are you excited to learn? Are you driven and ambitious and want to be a part of the growth story of the company? That's definitely something that I look for. I think that when a candidate comes in, and not only just understanding what the company does, but also understanding where the company's at from a growth perspective says a ton about the candidate. So like if they
Yeah.
come in knowing that uh, we're growing or we're hiring and they've seen that, I think that says a lot about the candidate too. So do your research. It pays off.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy, especially there's like ChatGPT modules, like one is Perplexity AI, it's free. Take a research module, and all you have to do is get a pre-formatted question list. When were they founded? Who's the CEO? When was their last fundraise? You come with that info as a candidate, boom, you just look super dialed in and you separate yourself very quickly.
Absolutely.
Final question about high growth. So something that happened a lot when I was at Clearbit is our targets would change all the time because we kept trying to like stretch to what we thought was possible, but then maybe it was too much, but then it was too little. It's so dynamic. Have you gone through that high volume or very volatile like quota change before?
Yes, at both of these organizations that I referenced, yeah, definitely have gone through that sort of change. But I think that we were lucky, like at both places, to have awesome leadership that managed through that change really well. So yeah, I have some stories, but it was great.
Yeah.
It was an experience for sure. I have gone through that.
So my question to you, because something I struggled with was the change management. My question to you would be, what advice do you have for SDR leaders that are going through that? And it's really hard to keep their team motivated.
Over communicate, be super transparent about the why. I think that helps everyone. Recently at Aptiga, like the change that we went through was I came in, the team was doing all the SDRs were doing inbound and outbound. And when I came in, we had a few meetings and the goal was to get the team to a stage where we had an outbound team and an inbound team. And we focused really, really on this new partner motion that the company's been working on. And so we kind of had to shift our strategy in terms of prospecting and outreach. And with that, also shift from a large scale, like large volume approach to a more personalized outbound target account approach. And so those are a lot of changes and a lot of changes in a 6-month period to overcome. And what I found through that process was just to keep communicating as much as I could with my team about the why behind all of it. Like, yes, I know this is uncomfortable to change the way that we're doing this, or I know it's uncomfortable to come from a role where you were half of what you were doing was inbound and now you're fully outbound. I know that's difficult, but here's the why. This is what it's going to look like later. And just being honest with them about where we're going and what the plan is and what the intention is, and ensuring them that like we have their back along the way, which is true. I think that that's really important for sales leaders. Is just like your job is to have your teams back and support them and make sure that they have everything they need to do their role. Like being an SDR is very hard, as we know. So every day through those changes, my mindset was just communicate to the team, be honest with them, give them what they need to get to the next step, and reassure them that I have their back every step of the way, and be authentic about that, genuinely support them. So, yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question, but
It does.
that's my perspective in
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. I'll share kind of a more transparent story because I'm not there anymore. But when I was at Fourth, we had to bring in a new CRO, and our strategy changed too, from an inbound outbound hybrid model to, hey, we're going to do full outbound SDRs. Like you are cold calling, hitting the phones. All inbound is going to go to our AEs essentially. And this team prior to those changes had been pretty comfortable on the inbound and living
Yeah.
pretty well. And I came in as a brand new leader during this change. And as a new leader, your goal is to build relationships and build trust. So my
100%.
task was to come in, totally disrupt them already by being a new leader, then totally disrupt their inbound outbound model and move to full outbound phone heavy. And so I felt just hated for the first 3 months I was there. And I think your answer is so spot on, because what I committed to was just being super transparent and even sharing like, hey guys, this is really hard for me, because the last thing I want to do is come in here and ruin your life. But this is what we're being told to do. Here's the why. Here's why that we're doing this, even if you disagree. And then I even had to have a heart to heart with each rep that I had, one-on-one meeting. And I said, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Here are the changes. I want to make sure you understand the why. How are you feeling about everything? Because if you want to go find a new role, now is the time to tell me, because I will actually go help you do that. And
Yeah.
so we had to have these really tough heart to hearts of like, do you want to be here? And I actually had 3 SDRs decide, hey, I don't think I'm cut out for this new phase of the business, and was able to help them in some capacity go make a transition. But they were awkward combos, but we had to have them. We had to have that level of transparency to move the business where the business was going.
Yeah. And I think that another important piece of that combo too, that I had to have, where I as well was like, hey, if this is not for you, let me help you. And like, let's figure out a plan that really works well for you. But the other piece of that, the last piece of that conversation was, okay, if you're on board, even if you're not happy about this, I need you to disagree and commit. And we just got to move forward. But luckily, like the team had an amazing attitude about it. And I was really fortunate to just have an SDR team that was all in. And I don't take that for granted. I know it could have been a much, much harder shift. So yeah, they were great. And on the learning piece of it too, like joining a new company and being tasked with all this change, I agree that you have to connect with your team. You have to understand what they're doing before you go into making these changes. And like, that's the perspective that I came from. Like, I didn't start making any of those big changes until probably 3 months in, because I really wanted to understand what are they doing and how are these changes that we're proposing actually going to impact them. and like
Yeah.
really have a deep understanding. That way I can talk them through it and have more answers. And yeah, so I agree with you 100% on both of those things.
Yeah. And one more tip to throw in for any leaders having to go through that is also remind your reps of why this change is going to benefit them in the long run. Right. So one of the conversations that I had with these reps was, hey, look, I understand like inbound's great, but if you actually want to go be an account exec, you're going to need that hunting experience. You're going to need to be able to develop your own pipeline because you see it all the time. What if your SDR is not booking you meetings? How are you going to hit quota that month? And so it didn't fully take the pain away, but the mature reps that were like, they had the right mindset about it. They were like, you know what, you're right. Like, I'm going to have to go through this discomfort and get really good at outbound. And it is going to benefit me in the long run. And again, it didn't make it all go hunky dory, but there was some perspective there that helped by tying in the long-term benefit to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Outbound's like taking your vitamins. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not fun, but like it's good for you. You have to do it. And it is what makes you successful. So
Yeah. Okay, Jack. So I've got a fun question for you and then some like future pacing questions. Fun question is, what is a tool you can't live without? Is it your SCP, your dialer, your CRM? Is it something else?
oh, a tool that I can't live without. Gong. I can't live without Gong. I love it. I love being able to break down every discovery call, have those conversations with the reps, hear what's going on every day. Be like, I take those calls, I dissect them, I change our messaging because of it. I have conversations with the reps using it. Gong has been great. So yeah, I'm sure a
Awesome.
lot of sales leaders would agree, but I do love Gong.
Is there any specific way you use Gong that you feel like has been a huge unlock? I'll give you an example that's parallel. So in SalesLoft, I set up this Slack automation that pushed any email replies we got right into like an email reply Slack channel. So that way I was able to right there easily read whatever replies we're getting and then coach the reps in the thread of like, hey, you should probably respond this way, or how do you think you're going to respond to this? And so that was a really cool automation we set up. Do you have any like elite ways you're using Gong like that?
Wouldn't say they're elite ways. I'm kind of keeping it pretty basic with the training. But one thing I'll do often is snip the calls or snip sections of the calls that I think are valuable for the team. And then I will share those snippets within our team channel and tell the team to listen to it on their own time. When we sync up in a huddle or a meeting later, we'll talk about it. And usually it's shouting out something awesome that one of the team members did. So that's how I will typically use it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So what does the future look like for you? Such a vague question. I know, but are you trying to get back into ballet? Are you going to rock as a sales leader forever? You want to be a CRO one day? Like, what's the goal?
Oh, such a big question, Jack. The future right now is definitely exciting. I'm not going back to ballet. Hate to break it to you, but I do plan to continue to grow this new motion with the team at Aptiga. We have really laid some amazing groundwork over the last year, and I see 2025 as our year to really run with it. And I'm so excited about that. I have many other projects in the works that I will share later. But yeah, other projects going on that are super fun. Grad school, trying to finish my program is definitely in the future, getting that MBA. And we will see what the future holds after that. But I'm excited about 2025. I think that we put a lot of work into 2024. I personally have, professionally have, and I'm very, very excited about this new year.
Yeah, I do feel in general, everyone I'm talking to, all different sectors of my life, whether it's sales or not, there's like an optimism about 2025. I feel like we're all like, all right, let's go. Let's
Just
freaking go. Jack, is there a favorite quote, favorite saying, favorite mantra you stick to that you can leave with us before you go?
So, like I told you, I am a big tennis fan, and I believe it's a Billie Jean King quote, which is "Pressure is a privilege." And
Mhm.
I think that, yeah, like being a SDR leader, being a sales leader, being a leader at any organization, you're going to be in high pressure situations, But I think it's important to reframe that as how cool is it that I get to do this every day? How
Yeah.
cool is it that I get to work with these people and lead them forward? And yeah, I think it's important to remind ourselves of that.
I love that perspective. My wife is really good at reminding me of that because when I do leave a day and I'm complaining about whatever happened in SDR world, she's always like, Jack, you get to work from home, you make really good money, and you get to like just tap your fingers on a keyboard all day. Like
Life is
you're
good.
good. You're so right. That perspective's helpful. Well, Jack, really, again, appreciate you being on here and sharing your wisdom with us. How do we keep up with you? Is LinkedIn the best, or what else do you have?
LinkedIn is the best. I really don't use much other social media. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation. Just shoot me a message. And yeah, thanks again for the time, Jack. This has been really awesome.
Thank you.